Hello students, I'm Amuel. Today I am going to discuss Lesson 5, Sources of Information for History and Science.
Through prehistoric arts, we get a glimpse of how our ancestors lived. But where else can we learn our past? And what are the sources we have in order to learn and acquire information from prehistoric age and up to this present time? The first source we have is indigenous sources. Indigenous ang isang bagay sa isang lugar kapag ito daw ay nag-exist naturally, na hindi natin alam kung saan at kailan ito nagmula. When referring someone as indigenous, sila naman ang mga taong nabibilang sa ethnic tribe, na isinasabuhay pa din ang culture and tradition created by their ancestors or ninuno. Therefore, we can only say that the source of information we acquire is indigenous kapag hindi natin alam kung kailan ito nangyari at saan nga ba ito nanggaling, because the information itself existed naturally. In addition to that, indigenous source is not known by many people because this unique knowledge, culture, and tradition like traditional dance, songs, offerings, prayer, or rituals are being practiced within a group of tribe or within a society only. Under the indigenous sources is the oral tradition. This is a form of narration or pagkikwento kung saan ipinapasa ng nakakatanda sa anak o apo ang kanilang nakagisnang kultura at paniniwala. In oral tradition, the elders serve as the speaker while the younger people are the listeners. For example, sabi ng mga lolo or lola natin, bawal daw bumili ng karayom kapag gabi dahil daw may mangyayaring masama. Because of this, hanggang paglaki natin, bit-bit natin yung mga paniniwalang ibinahagi sa atin ng ating mga lolo at lola. For sure, you will recount these beliefs or stories once you have your own child. However, oral tradition cannot be considered as reliable source of information as these stories have been told and retold so many times. Posible na ang story or information na nalaman natin ay gawa-gawa lamang. That is why it is considered as imagination or fiction. The following are examples of genre under oral tradition that had been told by our ancestors and were handed down from one generation to another. The first genre we have is legend. It's a fiction which tells about the origin of something or pinagmula ng isang bagay. Best example of this is the famous story of Alamat ng Pinya. Because of this story, we believe that the word Pinya is derived from the girl named Pinang. However, this kind of story is not verified because it has no proof or evidence to begin with. The second genre is folktale. In short, ito yung mga kwento na kilala or sikat sa isang specific na lugar o bayan. O mas kilala natin sa katagang kwentong bayan. The best sample story of folktale is the story of Bernardo Carpio from Montalban, Rizal, wherein Bernardo is a giant who saved the town of Rizal from the earthquake by putting himself in between of two colliding mountains. Another example of this is the famous Alamat ni Maria Makiling of Laguna. The third genre is epic. It is a long narrative poetry that tells a heroic adventure or pagpapamalas ng kagitingan ng isang main character. The best example of this is Ramayana. It is a Hindu epic about the adventurous journey of Rama. The Iliad that tells the story of the Greek struggle to rescue Helen from her Trojan captors. And the Odyssey that takes the fall of the city of Troy as its starting point and crafts a new epic poetry. The fourth genre is mythology. It is a story similar with the legend and folktale, but it focuses more on creation or paglikha. Stories of mythology also tells how the lives of mortals or humans influenced by gods. The best sample story of mythology is the Olympians. Here in the Philippines, we also have a Philippine version of gods and goddesses. We call it as deities, Diwata, Bathala for male god, Bathaluman for female god. And don't forget the famous characters of we, mortals or humans, are influenced by them when sometimes you have to pray, wish, and ask permission for a specific reason and other beliefs. The second source we have is primary sources. These are the original materials such as artifacts or relics, documents, recordings, accessories, ornaments that were produced and used during a period in history. The question is, how can we acquire information by these materials? They were discovered by the archaeologists who studies human activity. Through the recovery and analysis of material remains, it will be recorded or documented. By the time that the study is accurate or complete, it is then released by the public for us to know or to be informed. That's why information from primary source are served as concrete evidence or matibay na katibayan of how people lived in the past. Let's take a look of some famous archaeological discoveries in the Philippines. The Yawning Joret of Leta-Leta Cave. It has distinct rim or opening that resembles a shouting or yawning person. It is the earliest spot discovered in the country. Malay nyo, isang certified plantita pala ang owner nito. The Callow Man. Discovered in Callow Cave year 2007. It's approximately 61 millimeters or 2.4 inches. It is the earliest human fossil found in the Asia-Pacific region, and the bone age is 67,000 years old, predating the Tabon Man. And the last is the Bolinao Skull, discovered in Bolinao, Pangasinan. It is the only one out of 67 skulls recovered that the teeth was decorated with fish scales loop gold ornaments that symbolizes wealth and bravery during the prehistoric era. And the last source we have is the secondary sources. These are the documents made or produced after an event has taken place. Ito yung mga documents na na-analyze and interpreted ng isang tao that gives another angle, perspective, and wide range of information. For example, history books are considered as secondary sources because history books are mostly written by the people who are not present on the event. However, they want to explain a particular event using the evidences they have gathered or explain the primary sources. These are the examples of secondary sources. Library. Because of the wide range of books, magazine, and other reference materials, libraries are best place to go for an extensive reliable research. The Royal Library of Alexandria, located at Alexandria, Egypt, was the oldest library in the world and the center of learning facility of Alexandrians. No longer exists because it was accidentally burned down during the Alexandrian War by Julius Caesar. Biblioteca Nacional de Filipinas, or the National Library of the Philippines, was established by the Spanish government and the official country's national library, located at Ermita, Manila, includes the original materials of Dr. Jose Rizal's Noli Me Tangere, El Filibusterismo, and Mi Ultimo Adios. Museums. How can we say that the information we acquire in museums are secondary? As museum is the place where we can see the primary sources or the original materials like artifacts, relics, and documents. Simple lang. When visiting museums, the information or infographics you are seeing or reading placed from each materials was explained, analyzed, interpreted, and written by the one who discovered it, or by the archaeologist. Here are some of the famous museums where we can acquire secondary source of information. National Air and Science Museum, or NASAM. It is located in Washington, D.C. It holds the largest collection of historic aircraft and spacecraft in the world. And it is the research hub of history and science of aviation, spaceflight, planetary science, terrestrial geology, and geophysics. And the last one is the Mind Museum. It is located at Taguig City, famous for its 250 interactive exhibits about science. It is divided into 5 themes: atom, earth, life, universe, and technology. Apart from visiting libraries and museums, there are also other sources of information such as interview, archives, blog, and blogger. Interview is a meeting between two or more people, in which a prepared interviewer asks questions and records the answer of an interviewee or specialist. Archives. For a thorough research about history, you can check out the archives to find the public records or historical materials because the documents are all well kept and preserved. Blog. It is similar to an editorial column where the editor expresses his or her opinion about a certain issues. Blogger. A blogger who owns or maintains a blog shares his or her insights and reviews in anything. Although a blog entry can appear like a personal journey of the blogger, it still contains interesting and useful information, especially if the blog discusses lifestyle issues or latest trends. Like makeup guru YouTubers Raisa Contawi, Michelle D, and Ann Klutz. And for the entertainment blog, we have Mimia, Team Payaman, PewDiePie, and many more. Are you still having a hard time understanding the difference between primary source and secondary source? Let's discuss it. A primary source tells you about an event and is from the time of that event. In short, andun ka at na-experience mo mismo ang isang pangyayari. Example, Senator Juan Ponce Enrile shared his experience how he was tortured by the Japanese during the World War II realization. While the secondary sources tells you about the event but is from the time after the event, they often attempt to describe or explain primary sources. For example, Jessica Soho interviewed Senator Juan Ponce Enrile about how he was tortured by the Japanese during the World War II. Then Jessica released his statement by her special segment of Kapuso Mo Jessica Soho TV show.
That's all for today. I hope that you've learned something. See you on next lesson. Bye!
Happy learning at home with lessons made easy by Olivarian GOTEACH. One proud Olivarian.